Hi guys, welcome to my YouTube channel. In this video, I'll be showing us how I made this bubu. If there's something you're interested in learning, then stick with me to the end of the video. Alright then, let's get into it. I used 4 yards to sew this. So the first thing I did was fold my fabric in two across the 45-inch length. So this is Ankara, it usually comes in 45 inches for the length, and that's going to be the length of my bubu. So I folded it in two, but I have two layers, so one for the front and one for the back. And also I've measured the length of the dress, so I was working with 62 inches length, and then I added 2 inches for folding allowance. So I cut it off. So what I have now is the fabric I'm going to be using for the dress, so for the front and for the back. Now to the drafting. First, I'm going to apply my actual shoulder measurement. My shoulder is 14 divided by 2, that's 7 inches, and I'll apply that on the fabric. This is just to determine the length of the sleeve. And then from that point, I would measure the length of the sleeve I want it. This is just in case you want yours shorter, then you'd measure what you want and then mark it. But I want mine to go all the way to the end of the fabric, so I'll just leave it there. Now for the neckline, I'm going to be applying the neckline for the back. So the width is 4 inches and the depth is going to be 1 inch. So I'll mark that. And then I'll use my pattern master to draw the neck curve. Next, I'll go to the end of the sleeve and drop down by 1 inch. So from this 1 inch, I'm going to connect it to the shoulder width with a straight line. Then I'll apply my bust length measurement. So from the shoulder to the bust length is 10 inches. So I'll mark that. This measurement is dependent on the client. It's not a constant measurement. Then I'll draw a straight line across. Next, I'll apply the opening for the sleeve. So I want the sleeve opening to be 8 inches plus half inch sewing allowance at the top and at the bottom. So I'm going to mark 9 inches from the shoulder drop. Next, I'm going to apply my measurement. So I'm going to be applying the circumference on the bust line that I drew earlier, and it's going to be the biggest circumference. So my biggest circumference is the hip, which is 40 inches divided by 4, that's 10. From the 10-inch mark, I'm going to be adding 5 inches. This is for the bubu big feel, and then I add 1 inch for allowance. Now for that big feel, you could go from 4 inches to 6 depending on the look you're going for. I wanted mine a bit bigger, that's why I used 5 inches. So I'll be connecting the sleeve to this 5-inch line, and that line is going to go straight down. I'm not doing any other measurement at the hip or at the waist. It's just going to be that measurement at the bust line all the way to the length of the fabric. So I'm just going to draw the line across. So this is for the back pattern, but the back and the front are literally the same thing. It's just the neckline that's different. So I'm just going to cut this out for the back and the front, including the neckline. So I'm just going to be cutting out the pattern, and then I'll come back and work on the front. So I'll take the back piece and put that away, and then I'll work on the front piece. Now for the neckline, I'm going to remove 1.5 inches from the width. This is because it's a scrub neckline, so I'm going to be reattaching it with a different fabric. So I'll remove 1.5 inches, and then for the length, I'll measure 9 inches depth from the top, and then I'll mark the neck depth. So at that point where I mark, I'll measure 0.5 inch and mark it. So I'll be connecting this 0.5 inch I just marked to the shoulder width with a straight line. So it's giving me sort of a V, but that is straight at the bottom. I hope that makes sense. Once I'm done marking, I'll go ahead and cut out the neckline for the front. When you open up the fabric, this is what the V should look like. That V is where the scrub neckline is going to sit. I have this piece of Siri fabric, so this is what I'm going to be using for the scrub neckline and also the facing for the back. The first thing I'm going to do is iron interfacing on the fabric. Because it's a stretchy fabric, I'm going to iron the interfacing first before I cut it out. Now for the back facing, I'm just going to get the fabric that I feel is going to cover as much as I want to cover, and then trace out the neckline. Once I've gotten the shape of the neckline, I'll take the fabric off and measure the width of the facing. So the width I want to work with is 2.5 inches. So I'll mark 2.5 inches all round. So basically I'm using 2.5 inches because I want my back facing to align with the scrub neckline. This facing is going to be on the right side of the fabric, not inside the fabric. That's why I'm using 2.5 inches. So the scrub neckline is 1.5 inches wide, plus half inch sewing allowance at the top and half inch at the bottom. So by the time I finish sewing the facing for the back, it's going to come back down to 1.5. If you want your facing to be inside the fabric, like to the wrong side of the fabric for the back, you can make it 2.5 as well, or make it smaller. I'll go ahead and measure my 2.5 and then cut it out. Next, I'm going to iron this facing. So I'll just iron half an inch in from this side all the way to the other side. So this is what it's going to look like when I place it on the back of the fabric. Just the way I iron interfacing on the fabric and then cut it out, that's what I did to get this strip of fabric for the scrub front neck pieces. So I've gotten two pieces and folded it in two. So one side is on fold and the other side is opened, and each strip measured 2 inches. If you open that up, that means it's 4 per strip. The length of the strip should be longer than the depth of the neck, as much as 3 inches longer than the depth of the neck. Mine is way longer, like as you can see I have too much excess, but it should be like 3 to 4 inches, just so that you're on the safe side and it's not too short. Now to start working on the neck, I'll take one of the strips of fabric and place on one side of the neck. So I'm ensuring that I have some of the allowance at the top and some at the bottom. So the excess is not going to be on just one side, so just some at the top of the neck and some at the bottom of the neck depth. So I'll just pin that down. And then I'll do the same for the other side. Next, I'll go to the base of the V and then mark half an inch. So the half an inch is where my sewing stitch is going to stop. I just want to draw a line across to ensure that when I'm sewing it, I don't go past that line. So I'll draw my half an inch line. So it's very important that you mark this line. Either you eyeball it if you're sure that you're going to sew it correctly, or you mark it, because if you go past this line, it messes with the neck, how it looks. So I'll take this to the sewing machine and sew it straight and then stop at this mark, my chalk mark, and I'll do that on both sides. So now this is what it looks like, ensuring that the lines align. I'm repeating this multiple times because this is very important for your scrub neck. Otherwise, you're not going to have a neat finish. So next, I'm going to take my scissors and cut it. Just make a notch up to where the stitch stops. It's going to be like a little V. I'll do it on both sides. So this is what it looks like at the back, and then I'll turn it back to the front. So basically, I'll be taking these strips, so the excess I have at the bottom, I'll move it in, like take it inside. So I'll push it in one at a time. I'll push this one at the left and then I'll push the one at the right in. So that cutout part will also go in as well. This is what it should look like at the back. Next, I'll take my pressing iron and press it. I'm going to take my time to arrange this neck to ensure that it's the shape I want it to be and it's aligned and sitting properly. If you don't sit down, if you don't take your time to do this, you may end up losing it and doing it again. So just make sure that you take your time to do it. Now I'm just pinning the V's together so it doesn't move by the time I take it to the sewing machine to sew. Once I'm done pinning and I'm okay with it, I'll take it to the machine, and that V, that part where we notch, is where what we're going to be sewing this excess strip on. So once we lift the strips up, you'd see the V. So that V there is where we're going to sew it on. I'm going to be sewing from one side to the other, just ensuring that it doesn't go past where we've notched. So from the end of one side that was notched to the other end, if it goes past where we've notched, it's going to enter into the neck and you're not going to like how it looks. So just make sure that you take your time to do this. That straight line is where I'm going to sew it on. So this is what it looks like. So what I'm going to do now is to cut off the excess. Now for the back, I'll attach the facing to the neck from the inside, and then I'll notch it around the neckline so it sits properly. Next, I'll give it a good press, and then I'll pin the facing to the main fabric, then take it to the sewing machine and sew it round, attaching it to the fabric. So this is what I have. The next thing I'm going to do is attach the front and the back. I'll be attaching them by the shoulders first. So I'll attach from the neckline all the way to the end of the sleeve. And I'll do this for both sides. Also, I would ensure that the facing for the back and the scrub neckline aligns. So I've sewn it, and this is what I mean. Next, I'll iron the shoulder seam open. Now for the sleeves, I'm going to have the same shiny fabric at the end of the sleeves. I already prepared this 2-inch strip, and I did it the same way I did the strips I used for the front neckline. I'll take this to the sewing machine and attach it on the loose end. This is what it looks like. Next, I'll give a good press. So I'm going to be pressing it in the right side it should go before I take it to the sewing machine and sew it. Once I'm done pressing, I'll pin the strip of fabric to the main fabric, and then I'll take it to the sewing machine and sew it across. Once I'm done sewing it, I'll cut off the excess. Next, I'm going to take the sleeves together and sew with 1/2 inch sewing allowance from the sleeve all the way to the full length of the dress, and I'll do this for both sides. And the last thing to do is to hem the bottom of the dress. I hope you found this video helpful and easy to follow. If you have any questions, drop in the comment section. I'll be happy to provide any details that you require. I'm basically just ironing the hem before I take it to the sewing machine so that I have a really neat finish. If you notice, I'm very big on ironing. Every tailor should be very big on ironing, otherwise your work will be very neat. So I'll just do this and sew it, and I'm done with the dress. Alright guys, thank you all for tuning in today, and I hope to see you in my next one. Goodbye.